Alright, hopefully we go live this time. There we go. Alright, sorry about that. We had some technical difficulties, I guess. But let's try this again. Hello, and welcome back, or welcome to my repair channel. I don't know if you have been here before. If you do, you know what to expect. If not, hope you have some free time, because we're going to go through a full repair today. Let's get to it and see what we got. Normally I don't start this early, but I've worked on the house enough for today and I need a break. So today we're doing a Sunfire Super Junior. These are one of my favorite small subs. I like them just because they pack quite a punch in a very small package. And they're generally not too bad to work on. This one we'll go through and see what we can find initially. And all the caps have been discharged, so take note of that. First thing I notice is, we have two fuses on the inside, and the fuses are not blown. If the fuses are not blown, generally it's either a problem with one of the caps, or it's a problem with some of these components that are down here. If the fuses are blown, generally your MOSFETs and outputs are fried. So it's a good start. The other thing that I've noticed sometimes is sometimes these transformers go bad. If these transformers go bad, generally you have to pitch the amp. They can be rewound. I have rewound them before. It's a lot of work. I eventually will do that. I have one taken all apart, and we'll go over that process eventually. But right now I have plenty of complete plate amps that need to be gone through. So let's get into it. The protective tape is going to be removed. And the reason they do this is the amp is so tight inside the enclosure and it's right up against the sub, so that's just like a little bit of a added protection to make sure that the plate amp isn't touching the magnet on the sub and damaging the amp or breaking the magnet. But it comes off pretty easy. One of the beautiful things, there is no glue on these, so you take it apart and you work on it. It's pretty nice. There are high voltages in here. Make sure you discharge your caps. Coming through this connector, I think it's plus or minus 160, so make sure if you're going to work on one of these, you do your safety measures and discharge all your caps. These connectors are kind of hard to get out. You got to yank on them a little bit, but they eventually do come out. And after that, it's not too bad. This one's missing a couple knobs. You can get replacements. They're not the same, but they're close enough. They have a white thing instead of a gray thing on them. But these are available on DigiKey. So we'll give it some new knobs and make it look new again. Now I do have the entire sub for this one, so I will make sure to give it a test in its original enclosure. I don't know if I'll do that on the video or not, but it will get tested in its future home. The subwoofer in that unit is not destroyed. It doesn't have dry rot, which means somebody actually took care of it. Needle nose pliers. You're going to need those to get these weird looking nuts off. I don't know why they use these over a hex nut. I highly doubt that the pots came with these, but I guess it's possible. The pots are replaceable if you have to. I've never came across a bad pot in these, but you can get replacements for them. They're hard to find though, because they actually no, these ones are the regular ones. On the HRS series, they use these tiny little I don't know what they are, 13 millimeter micro pots. They're kind of a pain, but you can still find them. These ones use standard ones, so it's not as bad. Alright, so yeah, you got to take those 3 nuts off of the pots, and then we can start taking the rest of it apart. I'm completely unorganized right now because this is kind of a last minute decision to do this stream, but you know what, I want to get this done, so can't get everything done if I only do 1 amp a night and start at midnight every night. I can't promise I'll get 100% through this, because Grandpa might come over and want to do some more work. But we'll see how far we can get. Like I said, since the fuses aren't blown in this one, it should be fairly easy. So I'm removing the clamp that holds the MOSFETs down, and then there's just a few screws that hold this board in. You can do it from the top or the bottom. Let's do it from the top today. Some of these go into nylon standoffs, so you have to be kind of careful. Don't, over tighten them. Be careful you're not stripping them out. There's only 4 or 5 screws that hold this in. One of my favorite amps to work on. They don't bend the leads on these. The caps are pretty easy to get to. There's a lot of them, but they're still pretty easy to get to. A couple of reworks. You can see these are factory reworks. I didn't do that. There are a few different revisions of this board, so there might be different variations on your specific board to what rework has been done. But I really haven't. I've updated some boards to the later revisions, and I haven't really noticed much of a difference, so I generally just leave them alone. Alright, you have 2 nuts that hold the main output transistors in. That uses a number 1 Phillips. Hold on one second here. Sorry about that. Wife was calling me. These nuts can be kind of hard to get to. I generally just try to squeeze my finger in there and hold them. You can use needle nose pliers if you have to, but just make sure you get the nuts out of the way. And once the MOSFETs are loose and the screws are out, the board should just pop right off. They don't use that white grout. Yeah, you have to be careful with the glue here on the little glass. There's like this little lens here for the LED, and the LED is glued in with silicone. So sometimes you gotta pull on that a little bit to get it out. And these usually are not straight. Like they have to be at some kind of funky angle to get them to line up in there. You can straighten the leads out, and when you're putting it back together, let it find its own path again. But that is pretty much it for getting it out. You do have to fold these guys up to get to this section of caps over here, but other than that, it's not too bad. So we'll start with the first half. Get the solder sucker heated up. And like I said, this should be a pretty straightforward and a pretty quick recap. Almost always the caps if the fuses are not blown. I haven't isolated it down to one specific cap. I just know that it is the caps that cause the problem. And since you're already in here at this level, like trying to figure out you know, which ones are the ones that are bad, is it's not worth the time. Just replace them all. Only talking about, you know, I don't know, 25 caps, give or take a few. A couple of reworks. I added a diode in there. Put a resistor in parallel with this ceramic cap. Still don't understand why they use ceramic caps in these. Generally, film caps are used. I'm not sure. It might not be for the audio. Those might just be like power supply filters. I'm not sure. Schematics are available for a circuit similar to this. I don't know if the actual Super Junior one is available. I haven't looked. But I have one that's close enough so I can get, you know, the info that I need. And you have to bend the outputs up. And when you're working on these, you really want to hope that these guys aren't blown, because one, you can't get them anymore, and two, the replacements are fairly expensive. I use the MJL 42 and 43 series if I have to replace them. 4302 and I think it's a 4281, which is the same as... Actually, no, it's not the same. These are 2SA and 2SC, but they are compatible replacements. I just pulled up the data sheet, and since the Toshiba doesn't make them anymore, you got to get these ones that are made by onsemi. But they work good. I've used them before. They're not cheap though. It's like $5 to $7 per output. Alright, solder sucker is heated up. We're just going to start at the top and work our way all the way down. Just do one at a time. You can take that hot glue off. I usually put a bead of silicone across that because hot glue does not last. And let's see what we got. So this diode's already going to give us problems. It's right across the first cap I want to replace. So just unsolder the one leg, and then we can get to the cap. My solder sucker is already clogged. But yeah, we're just going to go through sequentially, make sure that we replace all the parts. And we should be in good shape. And these are garbage caps too. Samixon. I mean, they're not like terrible. I think they're tier 3, but I don't know. Still not as good as a high quality cap like Rubicon or Nichicon. So I'm just gonna go through and do a complete swap. Like I said, this sub is in pretty good condition. The box is in really nice shape. The drivers have no cracks in the rubber on them. So I'm gonna make this as nice as I can and do as good of a restoration as I can on the board, and hopefully this will end up in somebody's living room and it'll last them, you know, a good 20 years. As long as they unplug it. You got to make sure you unplug your amps when you're not using them. So first cap is 220 and 35 volts. There's a couple different sizes. I generally use UPS series, which is this guy, but the one that was in it is a little bit closer in size to the UPW, and I have a couple of those, so I always try and match it up. It doesn't really matter. You know, the legs on it should go in the holes, but I always try and you know, get it lined up as best I can. Now these boards are marked really nice too. The square is usually the positive pad. So they're pretty easy to figure out which way the caps go. They're marked in two different ways, one with the pad and one with the symbol on the silk screen. So I figure this will take them probably hour, maybe hour and a half to get the whole board recapped. I'll do a bench test on it, and then we'll throw it into the actual sub, and we'll do a little bit of a burn-in. I'll throw it in my living room and crank it up. Now this one, normally I wait till I'm done to trim the leads, but I'm going to do this one now because I want to get that diode back in place. I don't really like that it goes right across the legs of the cap. It's kind of a garbage way to rework it, but that's how they did it from the factory, so I'm going to try and duplicate it as best I can. At least until I know it's bad and needs to be replaced, then we can figure something else out. But make sure we get a good connection. You can be, on these reworks, you can be generous with the solder too. Blob it on there. It's not going to hurt nothing. Just make sure you got a good connection and it's not going to vibrate loose, because you do have a pretty large subwoofer with a very thick cone. Actually, I got to take the other leg off. This goes right across another cap I'm going to do. Lucky me, right? A lot of these are 4.7 microfarad and 50 volts. Usually they're orange in color, depending on what revision it is. But we're going to go through a lot of those. There's a couple. This is one of the weird ones, one of the .068s. It's hard to see too. Like, I don't know, some of the times the writing on here is pretty small. .68 and 50 volts. I believe there's two of those. For these ones, I used the KL series from Nichicon. Those seem to be suitable replacements. Again, polarization is marked. These ones that are have the really small lead spacing, you can actually solder both of them at the same time. Helps when you're trying to get them positioned correctly. Alright, same thing with this one, just because we have that rework going to it. Actually, I'm going to move this diode while I'm at it. See if I can get more of a straight line going to it. It's a little bit hot. Just Straighten the legs out. And see if we can make it just a little bit better. I just don't like that it's sitting right on top of that capacitor leg. I'm sure it would have been fine, but fine isn't always good enough for me. Sometimes it has to be better than fine. Flawless. Alright, that should work. I'm going to move the back leg to the inside. And all this does is it just gets it out of the way of that cap that's there. That way if it does buzz around on the inside here a little bit, it won't break into the casing of the diode. You know, chances of that are pretty low anyways, but still doesn't hurt to take a few extra precautions. I have nothing to lose at this point. Better solder joint doing it that way too. Alright, hopefully we can proceed and just jam right through this. And we're just going to do one at a time because I don't have these all marked or mapped out. We're starting with the 4. So on this one, the 4.7 and 50s are green. Usually they're orange, but we got plenty of them, so. And if we run out up here, I have more in a bag. This is one of the, everything uses this cap. Now all the polarities, something to notice too. If you look at the caps, all the polarities on the caps, all the negatives, generally point this way on the board. So when you're doing your check to make sure that you did everything correctly, if you look at that, that's a quick way to tell if you got one in backwards. So everything should be pointed the same direction. You have a couple of bipolars in there that don't matter and are not marked, but actually I think there's only just one in this guy. But that's a quick way to make sure that you got your caps right. I generally just do one leg at a time, just to make sure I get them squared off and straight. And now that nothing else should be in the way, we should be able to just jam through these. But it'll be like a brand new amp when it's done. 2.2 and 50. Double check the value. See, I'm glad I double checked because that's a 1.0. 2.2s are in the back. Yeah, make sure you check your caps when you're putting them back in there. It won't always matter, but depending on what part of the circuit it is, you want to make sure you're I know somebody's going to call me out. Oh, you're bending the leads in the caps. I'm really not. I'm just doing it to hold it in place, just so I can get the one lead tacked in, and then I straighten it back out. And you can see from the factory, like, these things aren't in perfectly. I mean, I try to do better than they did at the factory, but It's not absolutely necessary. Just make it look nice and should be good to go. Next one is a 4.7 and 50. So yeah, generally, you know, just a recap is enough to get most of these going. You know, it takes some time to do, but you know, if you have a soldering iron, and this one you could honestly do with the just a little handheld vacuum solder sucker. You don't really need anything super fancy because the leads aren't bent, and it's generally a pretty nice amp to work on. You know, spend 40 bucks on the parts and an hour of your time, and you have a brand new sub. The boards are generally well made. I have not seen pads lifted off yet on any of these. I'm not too aggressive as I'm working on them, but they seem to hold up. 10 microfarad and 50 volts. But, you know, if you watched any of my other videos, you'll understand right away why I enjoy working on these. They're pretty easy compared to they're even easier than KLIPSCH, I think. Like maybe on par with a sub 10 or sub 12. But the components are easy to access, easy to rework. They don't bend the leads. There's really not a lot of bad things I can say about them, except they use really shitty caps, and sometimes the transformers blow up. And make sure when you're soldering these 2mm pitch caps, you don't bridge the legs together too. I mean, it's not common, but it's not uncommon either. It does happen. Sometimes you will have like one of these weird surface mount resistors go, and it's kind of hard to find. Generally, that's not a frequent occurrence, but it could happen. So you just got to kind of be mindful of it. The top section of the board is almost done. The caps on this board really aren't the critical ones. I mean, I would definitely replace them, but it's generally the main power supply caps are the ones that are bad. That and the bigger ones. These two here, these three are the ones that are almost always bad. And then the power supply caps are usually, you know, short after. You can see on here that the plastic is turning brown around the transformer. So the transformer runs hot, and then you have these big diodes down in here. And those big diodes throw out some heat too, and you know, guess what's right by the diodes? All the caps. So they dry out. It kills your caps, which in turn kills your amp. Sometimes you'll get a leg that's on a ground plane. Doesn't want to cooperate. Throw a little lead on there and should be good to go. Definitely use leaded solder on a subwoofer amp. I know everybody's, you know, paranoid about lead these days, but you know, I've never seen anybody chewing on a circuit board that goes in an amplifier, so I don't really think you have to worry about it. It's inside the box, it's closed up, it's sealed. I don't think there are any immediate risks with using lead solder. And under extreme vibrations, which usually happens in a subwoofer, you want leaded solder because lead-free solder is prone to cracking. If you do use lead-free, make sure you get one that has a high copper content. Give yourself the best chance possible for the joint to last. You don't want to go with pure tin. I don't even know what the alloys are because I just use leaded. It works. I don't know what specific alloy this is. Let's take a look. This is 63% tin, 37% lead, and yeah, that's it. It's good stuff. I use it on everything. I haven't had a problem. Don't be afraid to get a little heat in there. Make sure that you got your joints are nice. Get a good fillet on every cap. This one's on a ground plane again. Just hit it with a little lead. Soften it up. The leaded solder melts at a lower temperature too, which is nice. If you have a giant ground plane and you want to get you know, get some heat into it, you need an alloy that melts at a lower temperature. It definitely makes it better. Oh, we got a comment here. Main Auto. Yeah, we can do another true subwoofer repair. We'll get to that. I have a lot of amps. Just put it that way. There's a ton of amps I have on my shelf, and I'm trying to remodel my basement, and I'm at the point now where they're in my way, so I don't really have much of a choice. I need to get the amps repaired and out of here. You know, they don't do any good sitting on a shelf. Somebody needs to be using these on their stereo. Or in their home theater, wherever they want to use them, but, you know, they do no good sitting in here. So hopefully I will have plenty of time to do many more repairs, because I want to get rid of this stuff. Not only that, I have a lot of people that want me to take on repairs for them, and I just don't have the space right now. You know, I'm only doing 3 at a time, and kind of sucks. My waiting list is outgrowing my repair capabilities. It probably means that I should turn this into a business, but I need to wait till the wife becomes an executive, and then I can start doing that. So some of the caps will take a minute and I'll check just to see if there's anything wrong with them, if they were leaking, if they have any problems. Sometimes you'll find one that is, sometimes not. It's all kind of, it depends on, you know, how bad they were before you started out. Sometimes it's fairly obvious when you have a failed cap. Other times, you know, you'll replace a couple, check it, won't work, then you replace them all and it works, and you never know which one was bad. You could test them all, I guess, if you wanted to, but that's a waste of time, I think. Alright, top section is done. So we got all these guys replaced. Now we're going to move on to the middle section here. Again, this is a bunch of smaller caps. But we're just going to keep jamming through. These guys up here are, actually some of them are in the audio path, but they're mostly for the power supplies. So we are going to start down here by the power connector. I know these are only, what are they, 8-inch subs? I think they're either 7 or 8-inch. But I am thoroughly impressed by the amount of power that these little subs put out. Like, I know I've mentioned it before, but I was watching cartoons on the TV and I had this hooked up and I was just testing the sub, and I didn't have it hooked up to any special filtering or you know, preamp or anything. I just ran a line out right into the sub and set the crossover and turned the volume up, and I wanted to see what it can do. And some of the sound effects were so loud they startled me. That's pretty impressive coming from an 8-inch sub. Like, my room's not huge, but it's not a small room either. I have a 10-inch and a 12-inch KLIPSCH sub that do not seem to have the output that this little guy does. So it might be small, but this is not a sub to mess around with. It's meant for business. I don't think it was originally designed and intended for special effects. I think it was more for just adding some really clean, crisp low end to a higher end system. But if you have a small enough room, you could definitely use it as your LFE channel on your surround sound. I don't see why it wouldn't work. It produces very tight, fast bass. Some people, you know, they prefer, you know, that pounding in your chest feeling over the audio quality, and this will give you some of that, but I think it's much better suited for a musical application where you need something fast and clean. $100 at 25. I think there's only one of those on this whole board. I've seen these resistors here go bad. The large ones, typically it's R102. I don't know what causes it. I think it's one of the failures in the outputs. I don't exactly know what they do. I'd have to look at the schematic. But I don't know. So far, the things that I've seen wrong, mostly it's just the caps, and then the output's blowing. And the outputs blow because the caps fail, because they're cheap caps. So if your caps are starting to fail on your board, or you're starting to get hums or noise, don't keep running your amp. Turn it off and get it fixed. Because replacing the outputs on these is kind of a pain. They're all bent. You have to bend them. I had to make a special little gauge so I could get the legs on it bent right. That was kind of a pain. But I still love the fact that they don't use the goop on it, so I'll gladly replace these over any other amp. I really hate working with that silicone thermal paste. Alright, so this is our bipolar, 1 microfarad, 50 volt. This one does look like it might have been leaking a little bit. Hard to say. But we will replace it. And these are the Nichicon UVP series. They tend to be my favorite replacement. Let's check the value. 1 microfarad, 50. No, the one thing I have found is that on the replacements, I cannot seem to find a series that I like that is rated for 105C. I don't know if the original one was or not. The original is only 85 anyways, so I generally try to do 105C on everything just because you get longer life out of them. But you can't always do that. Sometimes you have to deviate a little bit from that. So I try my best, but sometimes you can't always find the right size or the right value. Alright, so now we're getting, most of these should be 4.7s throughout here. Helps to wiggle them around a little bit when you're trying to free them up. I actually have somebody over here visiting, so I'm probably going to have to end the video soon. Yeah, 2MK. I have 2 MK2 subs that I'm going to put in my theater as well. They're main audio. I love them subs. They're powerful. I think Grandpa's here, though. Grandpa's here, so I might have to end the stream early. We'll see. Maybe he'll hang out. But he likes to work. He don't like to just sit around and watch. I can hear him up there. He's coming. Yep. Alright. Give me a minute. I'm going to mute and find out what's going on. I'll continue working, though. Alright, I'm back. So I'm going to replace one more cap, and then we're going to end up picking this up later. I'm going to run to Home Depot. I got to get a few things, and Pop wants to continue working, so it's kind of hard to say no to that. There's plenty to do. So we'll get this last one in. I apologize. We'll make it a part 2. Finish that up later tonight. And that'll give me some more time to do testing and whatnot. So I appreciate you guys tuning in. I know this was kind of short, but you know, can't argue with the old man. When he wants to work, it's time to work. So we'll do that, and I will check back with everybody in a little while, couple hours. Give me a few hours, and then we'll get back and we'll finish this amp up and test it. So thanks for tuning in, and we will see you later.